Now it's the showbiz trial of the decade that's had us completely hooked from the beginning.
Well, the legal case between Hollywood actor Johnny Depp and the Sun newspaper has come to an end. The verdict is in. Johnny Depp has lost his libel case against the paper that called him a wife-beater. You've been following this, Matthew, haven't you?
It's an extraordinary case with, I think, a fairly extraordinary verdict. I mean, I've noticed on Twitter, #1 trend, justice for Johnny Depp. Let's not forget, none of us were in the court, apart from a few journalists and the legal teams. The judge has said that he found 12 of, I think, 14 specific allegations of domestic violence. He found 12 of those have been proven to his satisfaction.
So just explain, before we get into the verdict and what that means, what was this all about?
So this begins back 3 years ago with the Sun newspaper running an article in which they called Johnny Depp a wife-beater. And they say, how could J.K. Rowling possibly employ a wife-beater in one of her in a film based on one of her books? Johnny Depp has always contested that all the way through. To actually bring it to a libel trial is in itself extraordinary. Johnny Depp could have just walked away and said that's one day's headlines, tomorrow's fish and chip papers. It might go away. There's problems with the newspapers and stories in America, which we're going to get onto. There's a separate defamation case that's going to happen there in the new year. But he obviously felt that his reputation had suffered, that his employment was suffering, that people didn't want to work with him because of these allegations. So he took a huge risk. Libel is always a huge risk.
I mean, so much was exposed. Shocking stuff, some of it downright bizarre.
Yes. I mean, the defecation in the marital bed, the claims that he sort of insisted that Amber Heard was having affairs with high-profile Hollywood stars. She had various nicknames. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was Mr. Potato Head. I mean, very bizarre stuff. And drink and drugs.
A lot of, dirty laundry aired in public, no doubt about that. The way this works, it was up to the Sun, am I right?
In a libel trial, unlike a criminal trial where you have to prove someone is guilty, in a libel trial you have to prove what you wrote was true. It wasn't up to Johnny Depp to prove that he wasn't a wife-beater. It was up to the Sun and News Group newspapers to prove that he was.
So what was the evidence that the judge saw then that said that they accepted 12? Because to accept 12 pieces of evidence out of the 14 is huge.
It is substantial. And I have to say, again, I wasn't present in court, so you don't hear all the nuances, you don't hear all the arguments from the various barristers, but it didn't feel to me that all the incidents had been proved beyond reasonable doubt, but that's not how a libel trial works. It's up to the judge to feel that it's been proven.
So now, if you look online, aside from the, Johnny's innocent stuff on Twitter, the online newspapers now can say,
yes, indeed,
Johnny Depp
is a wife-beater.
Yes,
they can. It is going to have a catastrophic effect on his career, I think, now.
He'll appeal, though, will he?
He will appeal.
And on him as a person.
And on him as a person, set against the babackground of #MeToo, which, of course, is sort of separate and remote from this, but at the same time coalesces with it. It's a terror. I mean, we've seen people suffer with their careers before when they fall out with Hollywood. If you make anti-Semitic comments, for example, like Mel Gibson, you're ostracised, you're pushed to the edge. And I suspect that as a result of this finding, Johnny Depp will find himself very much where Mel Gibson is.
Isn't it funny? Like, is it because obviously the judge, within their head, 12 out of the 14 cases that have now charged him with this, guilty of this. Does it say something about us as society that we are finding this hard to believe? Is it because we sort of go, Captain Jack Sparrow, but we love Johnny Depp, he's a handsome, gorgeous Hollywood star, surely not that we still can't believe it.
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think that whether you were Team Amber or Team Johnny was probably decided before the first day of the court hearing back in July. I think we knew where we were. And I must admit, I'm so conflicted by this. I am aware that 1 in 4 victims of domestic violence is male, but I am also aware that the legal system has let down female victims of domestic violence for decades, if not hundreds of years. And I am deeply uncomfortable with a #1 trend on Twitter saying justice for Johnny when we've had a lengthy trial in which all the evidence was heard and a senior legal mind, as Justice Nichol, has concluded that it's true. That
a spokesman for The Sun said The Sun has stood up and campaigned for victims of domestic abuse for over 20 years. Domestic abuse victims must never be silenced, and we thank the judge for his careful consideration and thank Amber Heard for her courage in giving evidence to the court. So what does this this all mean in America? The verdict is undoubtedly going to have an impact in Hollywood. Sam Rubin joins us now from Los Angeles. So what does Hollywood make of all this, Sam?
Well, I think Hollywood is sort of reeling it in and trying to take it in. It's an extraordinary verdict, and it's extremely damning to Johnny Depp. What we heard in court again and again was Johnny Depp and Amber Heard both referencing, quote unquote, the monster, this other person that Johnny Depp became when under the influence of drugs and drink. And what I think must be the revelation to Johnny Depp is he's the monster. The other person is the same person that he is. And this extraordinary detail of debauchery throughout the course of the trial and excess and violence and everything else, I think was terrible when the trial was taking place. And this just now underscores it and makes it worse. And also, the barrister there mentioned a second case. Johnny Depp has a $50 million lawsuit pending here in the States against Amber Heard. I'm not an attorney, but I would think that the verdict here essentially dooms that case. So it's all bad for Johnny Depp.
So what about his career? I mean, is it completely in tatters? Is there anything salvageable from this? Should we even be thinking about that?
Well, you know what? People always love these comeback stories, and it's a different degree of sin. But, you know, Robert Downey Jr. was a terrible drug addict with horrible problems. Not these kinds of problems, but problems of his own. And somehow the reservoir of talent sort of was able to resurrect and overcome it. And now he, is one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Can Johnny, pull it off again? It's hard to say. I think there's goodwill for Johnny Depp. I think what happened to Amber Heard did not happen to other people. So, he would be described as this sort of gentle, kind, quirky soul who has been Captain Jack Sparrow amongst other roles. But I think it also goes to show, we often think of extraordinary financial success as the cure-all for everything. This just further opened the door, to falling down the well. It didn't help that he was the highest paid actor in the world. It actually hurt and fueled his excesses. It's a dark day if you're Johnny Depp. I don't think he's got current things in the works. Will we hear later today, oh, this project is scuttled, or he's going to be fired from that? I don't know that we will today.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. We could speak to former news paper editor and PR expert Phil Hall now for his view on what happens next to Johnny Depp. So good morning to you, Phil. Were you expecting this to go this way?
No, not at all. I think people felt that there was a lot of 6 of one and half a dozen the other, a lot of accusations against her as well. And no, we didn't expect it to go that way. It was a surprise. I spoke to a number of people in the legal profession this morning who were equally surprised.
So what do you think about the state of his career now?
I think it's a very difficult one. The first thing, he's got to be honest with himself, hasn't he? Because he's in complete denial. He seems to think he's the innocent man. I mean, the first advice I would always give somebody is don't sue a newspaper. You're going to play out your whole private life in public. There are no winners in this court case, not for her or for him, really. It's a very sad situation. But he's got to be honest with himself. He needs help. He clearly has got problems with violence and his anger control, with drink and with drugs. And unless he admits he's got that problem and does a mea culpa and says, I've made mistakes, I'm going to correct this, I'm going to do something about it. This is a man who can really influence the public. And, domestic violence is one of the biggest problems facing society at the moment. Look at how the numbers have gone up during lockdown. We need people to shine the light on it, as this court case has done, but we need people to own up to it and admit their mistakes. Well said. I think he'll get lesser roles. I still think people will try to employ him because of his reputation in the past and being such a big name and the highest paid actor in the world. But I do think he's got real issues now to face himself.
And if he was your client and you were looking at his PR and thinking, right, what are we going to do here with this? What would you be advising him to do?
I'd be saying to him, you need to go into rehab for a start. The drink and drugs are not acceptable. I mean, people accept Hollywood hellraisers, but Hollywood cannot accept abuse against women or abuse against, violence against anybody. Because if they are, we're turning the clock back to pre-Harvey Weinstein. They've got to stand up and be counted. They can't just wash over it because he's a talented man. That said, you see that pop stars, footballers, Hollywood stars, that talent, as your colleague just described, the reservoir of talent, is still admired by people, and people will still go and watch his movies because of the great actor he is. But as a human being, and certainly for the future, trying to get big roles, he's got to clean his act up.